Today we're going to be talking about stress, how it affects you, and a number of ways that you can manage and reduce your stress. Hi everyone. In today's video we're going to be talking about stress, which is something that we all experience and something that we all have to learn to cope with. We're going to be talking about common stressors people will experience, some of the ways that stress affects your body, and a number of different ways to manage stress. But before I get into that, just a couple of disclaimers to go over. I'm a registered psychologist in the province of British Columbia, Canada, and this video is for informational purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute or replacement for advice from your doctor or mental health professional. Now, with those things out of the way, let's start talking about stress. Now, stress is a normal part of life, and it's something that we all experience to some extent on a daily basis. Some stressors we face are relatively mild, such as getting stuck in traffic, whereas other stressors can be much more significant, such as the loss of a job or marital difficulties. Stress can become problematic when it becomes so frequent or severe that it begins to interfere with a person's life. Stressors can begin to feel overwhelming, like there's no end to the stress, or that there's no way to cope with all of the stress or all of the challenges that a person's facing. So, what are some examples of stressors? Well, lots of things, good and bad, can be stressful. Relationships with other people can be a significant source of stress. Toxic relationships, marital problems, difficulties dealing with children, challenging work colleagues. We're surrounded by people, and therefore it's not surprising that our relationships with others can sometimes become a source of stress. Now, the ironic thing is that healthy and supportive relationships can play an important role in buffering against the effects of stress. Other sources of stress include major life changes like getting married, getting divorced, retiring. In fact, retirement can be a major risk factor for stress and psychological difficulties, as many people often are unprepared for retirement, and they find themselves suddenly without purpose, status, or direction in their life. And this can be really, really challenging and very stressful. Day-to-day activities and tasks can be stressors. Things like getting stuck in traffic, having to shuttle children around to their various extracurricular activities, figuring out what you're going to make for dinner or who's making dinner, getting all of those household repairs done. These seemingly little stressors can build up over time, and they can have a significant impact on a person. In fact, some research suggests that these small day-to-day stressors can have a much more significant impact on a person's psychological health than what we would consider much larger stressors. Work and school can be significant sources of stress. Just ask any university student around midterms or final exam time how they're feeling, and they're likely to tell you that they're extremely stressed with everything that they have to do. Having to complete work projects, particularly when there's tight deadlines or multiple demands all happening at once, these can trigger high levels of stress. Finally, even positive events can become a source of stress. One of the most stressful times of year for people occurs around the holidays, when they're trying to organize holiday activities, buying presents for people, organizing parties. These are all seemingly fun activities, but they can be quite stressful. One of the most stressful experiences for people is becoming a parent for the first time. This is a wonderful experience, but can also be one of the most stressful and anxiety-provoking times in a person's life, as new mothers and fathers struggle to figure out how they can balance life and caring for a new child. Another example is preparing for a big vacation or trip that you're looking forward to. It's really positive, but organizing all the packing, making sure the passports are up to date, figuring out travel itineraries, it's all working towards the goal of something positive, but it can still be stressful. So there are lots of things, both good and bad, that can serve as a source of stress or trigger stress in a person. And often we're so consumed with what we're trying to do in our lives that we're not even aware that we're experiencing stress until we start to notice symptoms of stress, which tend to gradually build over time. So it's not like you just wake up one morning and suddenly feel all of these symptoms of stress, but it tends to be more insidious, kind of sneaking up on you. And so some of the most common signs and symptoms of stress include things like irritability or moodiness. See, the thing is, stress can tend to drain your fuel tank. So you have just less resources available to tolerate or cope with things that might not otherwise bother you, such as your spouse leaving the light on or the kids making too much noise. What stress does is it can make your fuse a lot shorter, leading to irritability or being easily angered. Stress can lead to difficulty sleeping, either problems falling asleep, staying asleep, or waking up really early in the morning and having difficulty falling back asleep. Stress can contribute to high levels of worry and a general sense of anxiety or restlessness or just lots of restless energy. Stress can contribute to a variety of physical complaints like back pain or neck pain, headaches, upset stomach, chest tightness, rashes, skin breakouts, and some physical changes you might not even notice until you get tested, things like increased blood pressure. If you have pre-existing physical conditions like chronic pain or diabetes, stress can lead to a worsening in these conditions or making it more difficult to manage them. Stress can also make a person more susceptible to colds and flus, as stress tends to suppress the immune system, making a person more vulnerable to getting sick or taking longer to recover from sickness. Stress can lead to changes in appetite, typically reduced appetite, but also sometimes people can turn to eating to try and help cope with stress, which also isn't all that productive or helpful. So if you think about it, if you're experiencing all of these symptoms or impacts of stress, that's not going to be great. It's not going to feel great. The symptoms of stress can reduce quality of life, and people experiencing ongoing stress might notice that their relationships, personal health, and work performance all may begin to suffer as a result of these various impacts of stress. So, what are some of the things that you can do to better manage or cope with stress, or to try to limit the negative impact that stress is having on your life? Well, one of the first steps, and this sounds a bit obvious, but it's important, is to identify and be aware of your stressors. Sometimes one of the biggest challenges in coping with stress is not recognizing that we're actually experiencing stress, or that there are problems or challenges in our life that we're not dealing with, that we're not addressing. If you're better able to recognize these problems or stressors, you might find that some of the things are within your control, and that there are things that you can actually do to take some steps to address these problems. So for example, if I recognize that I'm constantly getting behind on work projects, and that's a big source of stress for me, always being behind, what I can do is I can try and problem solve ways of improving my organization or delegating tasks to other people in order to stay better on top of things. But if I don't recognize the problem of getting behind on work projects, I'll never try to figure out more effective or efficient ways of working. So therefore, the first key step is to recognize and identify the stressors or problems that might be contributing to my stress. Now, related to this, another key component to stress management is being more effective in problem solving. A lot of stressors that we experience in life can be attributed to problems that aren't being addressed or aren't being dealt with. And therefore, if we can become more effective at solving these problems, we're going to experience less stress as a result. Problem solving is an active, engaged process involving a variety of steps like clarifying and defining the problem, brainstorming solutions, developing an action plan to address the problem, and actually engaging in the action plan. Now, I've done some videos on effective problem-solving skills, so I'd encourage you to take a look at those if you're interested in learning more about more effective ways of solving problems. Now, another effective way of coping with stressors, particularly interpersonal stressors, involves being more assertive. Learning assertiveness skills and tools can be helpful in establishing healthy boundaries with other people and communicating more effectively to prevent or resolve interpersonal conflicts. So, for example, if I'm feeling like I'm having to do much more of the household chores than my wife is doing, and that having to try and keep up with all of the household chores and all of my work is overwhelming and contributing to my stress, well, one way to reduce the stress is to assertively communicate with my wife that I need more help and for us to figure out a better way of balancing and divvying up the household responsibilities to take some of that pressure and stress off of me. So assertiveness can be really, really helpful. And if you're interested in learning more about assertiveness skills, I've done a series of videos on assertiveness that you may want to take a look at. So the stress management techniques that I've talked about so far, they really focus on trying to address and resolve problems or challenges that are contributing to my stress. However, some stressors can't be eliminated or dealt with right away. And so it's important to recognize that stress management also involves ways of coping with stress for those stressors that you can't readily eliminate or reduce. Essentially, these are tools that can help buffer against the effects of stress. And one of the most effective tools to buffer or cope with the effects of stress is regular exercise. By building regular exercise into your life, it promotes a healthy and balanced lifestyle that can help burn off the physical impacts of stress, but also give you more energy, boost self-confidence, and can serve as a source of pleasure and reward, particularly if the exercise that you're doing is something that you enjoy doing. It's also important to recognize that stress can drain your fuel tank. It can drain your energy, wear you down. Therefore, it's extremely important to ensure that you're fueling yourself properly by eating well and making sure that you're getting enough sleep. Now, I know these can sound like really obvious things, but you'd be surprised by the number of people that I work with who are experiencing high levels of stress, and where we initially have to focus on is ensuring that they're taking care of themselves by eating regularly and establishing a good sleep schedule. Another important tool that can help cope with the impact of stress is relaxation skills. Now, there's lots of different forms of relaxation techniques, ranging from things like progressive muscle relaxation, where you tense and release different muscle groups throughout the body, deep breathing exercises, meditation, visualization exercises, and mindfulness. These relaxation techniques are skills, and therefore they typically don't come naturally to people. They often take some time and effort to practice, but with practice, these skills can be really effective in terms of reducing some of the physical impacts of stress. It's also extremely important to make sure that you're building rewarding activities into your life as a way of buffering against the effects of stress. It's critical to ensure that you're taking time out to spend with family and friends in relationships that are rewarding and meaningful for you. It's critical to ensure that you're still engaging in recreational activities, hobbies, things that you enjoy doing. You see, these are the types of activities that we often view as indulgent or luxuries. And it's the social and recreational activities that we enjoy doing. These are the things that tend to be the first to fall by the wayside when we're under stress. The problem is, if you're not engaging in these activities when you're under stress, then what happens is that your fuel tank gets drained and there's nothing replenishing it, which means that you get more worn out and more exhausted by the stressors. Therefore, it's critical to recognize that recreational and social activities are not indulgent luxuries, but necessary tools to help cope with stress and to have a more sustainable lifestyle. Finally, it's important to recognize whether the way you're thinking about problems or stressors in your life might be making the stress worse. We can often engage in negative thinking patterns that can contribute to us worrying more, catastrophizing, leading to self-defeating thoughts, and sapping motivation. Therefore, it's important to ensure that you think in realistic ways about the stressors and challenges and problems. And I've done a whole series of videos on recognizing and challenging negative thinking patterns. And so I'd strongly encourage you to take a look at those if you recognize that negative thinking patterns might be one of the causes or the sources or contributing factors to your stress. So I hope that gives you a better sense of some of the various sources of stress that we often experience, the impact that stress can have on us, and the various ways that we can cope with stress, either through reducing the intensity of stressors in our life, or by learning ways to cope better with stressors that we do experience. So I hope that makes sense. I would love to hear any questions or thoughts you have about this, so please leave me some comments in the comments section down below. If you've been enjoying my videos and would like to see more, please hit that subscribe button and notification bell, and you'll be alerted every week when I post a new video. So that's all for this video on stress. As always, thank you for making it all the way to the end of this video, and I will see you in the next one.